should you be teaching others? This is a little bit controversial in that you might be in a group that there is no teacher. It's quite typical. And then somebody has to take a role in some capacity at least. Otherwise, you are just flailing around and without any purpose. So if you are in that kind of situation that there is no teacher and you have at least a little bit more ideas than what your friends have, then maybe yes. The problem here now is that you can teach anything, and if you don't know what to teach or how to teach, it can end up in a mess. And believe me, I've been in there myself as a teacher. So I was like looking into Kendo manuals and whatever I could find. Because in the 90s, when I started, 1990, there were no books around to tell how to do medieval sword fighting. Actually were, but those were the manuscripts and they were not translated at that time and they were definitely not available. So it was a rough ride. So we had to look like the Japanese stuff and things like that, and that's how we started. Then we got some friends from overseas and from Sweden here to teach a little bit more Sword and Shield, and then it started to pick up from there. I think the journey is still on the way, so the medieval fighting community still doesn't have like agreed on how to practice with Sword and Shield, for example, even though it's a really simple weapon combination, but you can make it super complicated also. So now it becomes to your know-how, your background. So if you have been practicing other martial arts, you might have some knowledge that would be useful. I'm not talking about basic conditioning, but if you have been practicing any weapon arts, then sure, yeah, you could share that information. But now it also depends on your training buddies, that are they willing to learn? Some people want to do their own stuff, so you shouldn't teach if nobody wants to listen. That's unnecessary and just a waste of time. So it depends a lot if your group is sparring focused group, so that they will want to learn the practical applications, or if your group is then more like a technical group, so they want to drill in the tactics and things like that instead of sparring, so no sparring, maybe not at all, then you need to have the teaching arranged a little bit differently. But I would recommend it, and one good thing about teaching stuff is that you really have to think about it yourself. So if you are teaching something, you often think about it before. How are you going to teach? What are you going to teach? And then when you do that, you get some feedback, and usually you end up with a deeper understanding of your teaching or your techniques and tactics, because you have gotten this feedback. But I would like to say that teaching is going to be a different role from a fighter. So many good fighters are really lousy teachers. They don't know how to teach, or they have just few optimized techniques and then they try to push those to everybody else instead of giving out like more options, but not to confuse anybody. But that's one thing there. So definitely then, if you already have the skills and you have a good understanding, maybe background in sparring and practicing and this sword fighting stuff, then sure, go ahead. And the best thing, of course, is if somebody asks you to teach. And maybe they saw you somewhere and think that you might have something to give, and consider if you could say yes, because it might help other people on the way. So in a nutshell, yeah, I think teaching will complement your understanding and skills even if you are sparring focused. even if you're trying to improve yourself, definitely try to teach others. You don't have to do it a lot, but at least some. Just be careful that you also get time for your own training, own practice, so it doesn't become a full teaching job unless you really want that.